Hi, my name's Bo Keeley, and this video is about the Slab City Wild Kingdom. We're between the Coachella Canal on my right and the Chocolate Mountains on my left, and this is a brief history of how I got started with the animal drinkers out here. Between the Coachella Canal and the Chocolate Mountains, sprinkled miles apart, are about 8 animal drinkers, and you'll be seeing some of these. When I first moved here, I've been out here for 23 years. I've been in Slab City proper for 8 years. When I moved out here 8 years ago, I used to car camp the first 2 years out here in a Chevy Spark up and down the Coachella Canal. And daily, I would take walks up the washes. Often I would go all the way to the Chocolate Mountains. We'll be seeing those in a little bit on the way walking to some of the drinkers. While I was walking to the Chocolate Mountains, I discovered animal trails. In fact, some of them were like highways of deer, wild burros, coyotes. And whenever you follow those into the desert, you know you're going to come across a water source. And that's what I found. That's how I discovered the drinkers. Some of these were what I've nicknamed the sunflower drinker, the copse tree, the leaky drinker, and so forth. When I first discovered the drinkers 6 years ago, they were in terrible shape. They needed maintenance. So I fixed them, replaced the floats, adjusted the water level, put rocks on the covers. Of the 8 drinkers I found, only 2 were viable. Only 2 offered the animals water, and there weren't that many animals in. What happened was, over the course of the last 8 years, especially 3 years, the first 3 years, the animals drank, they got happy, they reproduced, and I started seeing that the drinkers, via my field cameras, I started seeing all kinds of young coyote pups, all kinds of young deer, young birds, vulture foals, and over the course of the last 8 years, the Slab City Wild Animal Kingdom was created. Whenever you see tracks like this in the desert, these are, this is a couple wild burros. So you can follow them, and they're going to lead to water, to a drinker. And that's what we're doing right now. Following this single track of the 2 burros, we see now they're widened up into many burros. That indicates we're getting near the drinker. This would be the area where they browse on the Palo Verde, on some of the mesquite bushes, the nettles. And this is what they do. They browse during the day, rest in the shade, drink, and then at night they're usually on the move. They often pass from drinker to drinker. I'll recognize some individuals at one drinker, and then 3 to 5 miles away, the same individuals at another. He's 7-foot wingspan, 6.5-foot wingspan. Does the camera pick it up?
Yeah.
That's a turkey vulture. He's cruising the wash here, looking for breakfast. He's got 7.5-foot wingspan. He's got a red head, and they frequent the drinkers. All of these, mostly burros, some deer. Actually, there'll be bobcat, coyotes, even badgers out here. We followed them, and you can see they expand into a bowl of hundreds of animals, of tracks. The desert floor is like a diary of what goes on the previous night. I call this the drinkers' buckets, and I'm putting together a photography book called Bucket of Wild Photos, Slab City. And here it is. Here's the first drinker. I call this the algae drinker for obvious reasons. It's shaded much of the day, and for some reason there's a lot of algae that forms. Wherever there's algae requires oxygen and no poisons, so this is good drinking water for the animals. Scrappers who get caught out on the Chocolate Mountain bombing range, sometimes the first water they come to are these drinkers. The algae drinker is covered by the first field camera, which is attached to a Palo Verde tree over here. This field camera is $50 from Amazon.com. In the distance at 8 miles, we're looking at the Chocolate Mountains. I've walked through them 50 times. Along the base, I have 3 drinkers up there. Difficult to get to, but some very good picture captures. What happens is animals between here and the Chocolate Mountains will use those drinkers, and then they get tired of those, or those drinkers go dry, and they'll walk down the washes at night and come to this algae drinker that's closer to Slab City. Right now we're about 6 miles outside of Slab City. My drinkers are in a range of 8 drinkers within a radius of 10 miles from Slab City. Let's go now from the algae drinker and follow the tracks to the next one. Walking to the next drinker. This is donkey poop, wild burro feces, and when you see that, you know you're getting near the drinker. Once one of my cameras was stolen, I eventually recovered it and saw on the field camera captures the picture of the wild burro. Now these are as big as horses, and their head's taller than me. A big mouth, but friendly. The burro had grabbed the camera in its mouth and taken it off, and walked and pooped, and I just followed the poop trail and found my camera. It's a ways to the next drinker, so I'm taking a break. I think of myself as the mayor of the city of Slab City Wild Animal Kingdom. I'm not the owner. I maintain what they need, the water, but the actual owner I traced down 7 years ago when hardly any of the drinkers worked. Remember, only 2 of the buckets worked, and there were a few animals because there's so little water. And I knew that if I could fix the rest of the drinkers, then I could populate all of this valley and have animals hopefully coming into Slab City to visit the people at their trailers. So I traced the owner of these 8 or so buckets. I called Yuma. I called the California Fish and Games of Sacramento. They said it's maintained by Yuma Division Fishing Games. I called Yuma. They said it's maintained by a private group out of San Diego. So I called San Diego, got hold of them, notified them that 6 of the 8 drinkers were down, and immediately they brought out a semi-truck van with quads and all kinds of equipment, and in a matter of months, all of the drinkers were working. Animals sniffed it in the air, started coming, copulating, and the next season, a year later, there were all kinds of young coyote pups and badgers and young bobcats running around this valley. Now let's continue on to the next drinker. We're nearing my favorite drinker. You can tell by the tracks. The wild burro poop. Burros are just donkeys. I think of donkeys as small burros. And then you can see the tracks widen out. And there it is. My favorite spot, the Leaky Drinker. It's called the Leaky Drinker because on the other side, there's cracks in this old 1970s concrete. This is a favorite of the animals because they can stand in that runoff, cool their feet in the summer, and there's always plenty of water. The Leaky Drinker field camera is situated 6 feet away. Most of my cameras I like about 1.5 feet off the ground at an angle to catch the animal's eyes and their head as they drink. And the distance I found best is 6 to 8 feet away. So what I do during my rounds is I come out here with my maintenance gear. I see what needs to be done with the drinker, clean it up, scoop the poop away, trim the branches, and then get the card reader out of the drinker, and then get the card reader out of the camera. And I'll do that on the Leaky Drinker camera right now. It's just a little microchip card that the Chinese made much too small because I drop them and lose them in the weeds. But this holds 32 or 64 gigabytes of data. That's 3,200 to 6,400 photos. And then I put in a new card. Close it up, get the right angle, and that's it. Now I have a card in my pocket with, if it were summertime in July, there would be up to 1,000 photos on it from a week. The animal traffic is that much, maybe 50 to 80 animals per night, and they make continual visits throughout the night for, during the week, 1,000 photos. I'm going to look for frogs under this cover. The Leaky Springs has a bunch of them. They'll line up at night in the front, on the bottom, across the front, and it'll be like a serenade of croakers. And at nighttime you can see their eyes, 4 or 5 sets of eyes picked up by these cameras work at night by infrared, and so you can see the frogs even at night. This is the cover, and you can see that inside, oh, there's a frog. I don't know if you saw him jump. I'll see if I can get him. He didn't like me going in there. He's a small one. He felt like he was about this long. I reached in here once and I was cleaning out the sledge and brought up a frog that was this long his body, this long spread out. He was as shocked as I was. He jumped out of my hands and made off to the bush. You can understand why they hang out here all summer. It's water, their environment. There's no other place to hang out. When the big burros come and drink, the frogs simply move to the other side. The burros acknowledge them. They actually kind of grin at them. They drip water from their chins on them. The frogs wait until they leave and get done drinking, and then line up again at the lip. Often burros empty this cistern, and in that case the frog goes deeper and deeper as it drinks, and it'll be 6 inches away from the burro's big mouth, and I've never known of a Jonah to get swallowed. But we'll see if I can find this one. I'm feeling sledge, about 3 inches of collected murk under here, and you can see it starting to come up the other side of the drinker, and he's buried someplace in that. We'll let him rest while I explain how this drinker works. The water comes down from a larger cistern of maybe 50,000 gallons. We'll be looking at that later, along with the tower and the solar panel that powers a little sure flow pump like the one you use in your trailer. So you get the sun powering the panel, powering the sure flow pump that brings up water. The water table here is real close to the ground, maybe from 20 feet under in a wash like this. Brings up water, keeps a cistern that's 10 feet wide, 10 feet long, and 6 feet deep filled. Never goes dry, never seen one dry in the summer, although I've had to maintain some of those so that they didn't go dry. And that water from a cistern located about 200 yards from this particular drinker flows underground, and there's a pipe that comes up into this back part of the drinker to this float. This is sort of like a bathroom toilet float, in that as it lowers, you can hear, or you might not be able to hear, the water coming in, and then as it gets up here just to the right water level, it stops. The valve shuts, so I can adjust how high I want these. I keep it fairly high because typically at sunrise, sunset, or during the night, burros come in bands. There'll be 4 to 8 of them. When there's 2 or more, 2 burros can empty this. What do we have? About 15 gallons here. They can empty this in 2 minutes. Then they have to look at the camera, browse around for food, and nuzzle each other until the drinker fills up again via this float in about 4 minutes. And the frogs come back. The burros drink more. They usually hang around. A band of 4 will hang around for about 20 minutes before it gets it filled. Then they'll vacate, and the next guest of that particular drinker will come. Typically in the series, there'll be burros followed by a coyote, followed by a bobcat, kit fox, and so forth every 5 minutes. It's almost as though they wait off stage visually until the last one leaves, and then they come in. Water's that precious in the desert. Cover up Mr. Frog and the float, and let's go look at how this whole drinker system works. The Chocolate Mountains out there, about 6.5 miles away now, have 2 drinkers, 2 big cisterns, gravity fed year-round, but they're blocked off by old corrals. So the burros can't get to that water. That's why we're going to see so much burro traffic through here. And you can see the burro poop on the way to our next bucket, which I call sandbar bucket, for obvious reasons. Here's why. On this particular drinker, it's either sunken or was built so low in the ground that the sand builds up around it. And every time I come, I scrape this away down to level, but the wind blows up, water comes in, and it eventually fills this little bucket with sledge at the bottom. So what I do on this one is usually check it whenever you're around water like this. Oh, look at this big frog. Did you see him?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think I caught it too.
That's Rex. That's the one I grabbed at this very drinker a year and a half ago that jumped out of my hand. Okay, we're gonna pop this cover up and see if we can get a good close-up of Rex. He likes this sandbar drinker because there's 6 inches of muck at the bottom. And I'll see if I can get you a frog's eye view of Rex by catching him. What I started to say is wherever you see frogs, wherever you see water in the desert, you also find animals. And that includes snakes. And one of the snake's favorite delicacies is frogs. take an awful big snake, a coontail or western diamondback, to swallow that frog. But I'm real tentative when I lift off these covers. Now it's off. There aren't going to be snakes under the water. But Rex, the giant frog, this is a desert leopard frog. He's going to reproduce here. This is interesting. Rex and his mate, there'll usually be a mate here, are going to reproduce. There'll be tadpoles in here later. They're going to grow into little frogs. But the tadpoles are going to be slurped up by the burros and the deer. And they're going to carry them off to the next drinker in 6.5 miles. So in this way you have mixing of genes, mixing of populations to keep a good gene mix and make the frog population a sturdier breed. Let's look for Rex. And if I don't catch him in my hand, he's going to jump out and hop that way, I would imagine. He bit me. They don't have teeth, but they have kind of like a hard bill. Come on. There's Rex.
Whoa, man, he's fast.
With Rex gone, I'm going to clean out this sandbar drinker of sledge.
Man, look at all that.
This isn't a waste of water because the 15 gallons can refill in 3 or 4 minutes. You can see how black the water gets and how clear, oops, it's also fecund with microorganisms, and how clear it's going to get once I get done cleaning it out. We'll leave that for another time, but I'm going to check the float, make sure it's tight, the mechanism below it to this, the mechanism below it to the pipe that runs